Hi, everyone. Thank you guys for joining me. I'm your host, Bernadette McDaniel, and welcome to A Paranormal Life. A quick side note, if there's any technical difficulties, it's going to be me because I'm basically running the entire show tonight. So a little glitch at the beginning. If you saw anything, that's me. My guest tonight is Robin McCray, and she is a Bigfoot contactee and experiencer, and I'm very excited to speak with her. So let's bring her on.
Hi,
Robin. So for those who don't know you, do you want to tell everyone a little bit about you? We heard a little bit about you when we had Duke Sullivan on, who was a fantastic guest, and he recommended you highly. So I'm like, let's get her on. So,
yeah, he's a
and
sweetheart.
the stories he told me off air about you were just amazing.
Yeah, I've been around them since I was my youngest memories are 2 and 3 years of age. I've been around the Bigfoot, primarily the dogmen, of course, cat people, ETs, a variety of cryptids, ghosts, paranormal, the whole paranormal thing. It's been like that my whole life. Everywhere I've ever lived, they've been. I didn't even know it was called habituation. They were there. And I've always interacted with them. I mean, most of the time I can safely say that either I'm getting mind speak by somebody or we see something or something goes on a daily basis. A slow week around here is 3 or 4 times a week.
Oh, wow.
Something's going on. I've got spirits in the house, which I've always, everywhere I've ever lived, they tend to show up. And it's just an ongoing thing. I went to the conference, the international conference in Siberia when Igor Borstev had it. I usually do the Georgia Bigfoot conference, which I'm at this weekend, and the 21st and 22nd, I'll be in Nebraska for their conference. There, I work with a large variety of people that contact me and just want to share their stories with me, see if there's anything I can help them with, maybe explain something. I do not claim to be an expert. I don't believe in my heart that there's any experts in this field. I believe that it takes all of us together to learn the information. Nobody's better than anybody else. I'm just like on that even playing field type mentality.
I agree with that. Because I've had experiences, if anyone's seen the show or if you've seen it, I've had experiences. I have spirits in my house as well. I've had it growing up, but like I said, backstage, I've never seen a Bigfoot or anything like that. Can you tell us your earliest memory of a contact from either anything?
I remember my first ET abduction. I was 4. I remember being on the ship. I remember talking to them. I remember what I saw inside the ship. They had what looked like a modern day CAT scan machine, like you would have seen like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, that kind of a CAT scan machine. And they had that on that ship, and they had a large, very tall gentleman that was laying on there unconscious. I had both the small grays and the tall grays were on that ship that I was on. I remember seeing the forest people looking in the window when I was 2 and 3. I don't remember a time that I didn't mind speak with them. In my world, I didn't know that not everybody did. That was a shock to me when nobody else did. And by the time I was, 4 years old, I would ask my parents about them. And back then, Patterson-Gimlin wasn't a thing yet. I was born in 1964. And so they had no frame of reference either. And I was very blessed because they never said, oh, you're lying, you're making it up, you're crazy or anything like that. They didn't know. They said they'd help me if they could, but they couldn't help me at that point. And then my mom would tell me stories about my imaginary friends that when I was a kid, and the one that she described was a dogman. The other one that she would describe was the Bigfoot. So it was pretty early on. I would go outside and I would see them peeking in the bushes and that type of thing. At one point, this was probably this was back from 2009.
Signal.
Pardon?
Sorry, I think we lost signal there. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Back from like 2009 to 2015, I was working with a group of forest people, and I would go out nightly about 2 o'clock in the morning and sit out in the woods with them. And I would either sit on my porch and then they would come out of the tree line and interact, or I would go sit on a log out in the woods and they would just walk around me and they would chant and they'd talk. And, they were constant daily interaction from them throughout the day. They had gotten comfortable enough where they would be uncloaked and just walk around the property. I would watch them cloak it from time to time. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And like I was saying before, I think we lost signal, that what your parents did was very important, in my opinion. Like, they didn't tell you were crazy. They didn't, brush you off. As a child, I think that's very important.
It was for me. And then I never really talked about it for several years because I thought, well, they don't know, anything about it. And I didn't want to tell anybody that I was mind speaking, because I didn't know it was called mind speak at the time.
Right.
And I was seeing these things because I thought everybody's going to think I'm nuts. And as I got older and more things happened, it was just too evident that this was what was going on. And then when I was having children and was married, there were other people that saw them as well. It's harder to say that, it's me when other people see what I'm seeing and are seeing this kind of interaction. And then eventually my mom came to stay the weekend, and at night they would come up and tap on the window and look in the window, and, they would want me to come outside. So she was there, and I didn't go outside that night because my mom was there, and I didn't want to frighten her. And they literally woke her up tapping on the window. So the next morning she's like, I fully believe you now. She said, I never didn't believe you. I just had never experienced it. She said, but they are definitely here. She said, I heard them. And we had went to, right before that, my daughter had a soccer tournament when she was in school. And I said to my mom, I said, we're going to be gone the whole weekend. Why don't you come? It'll be fun. We can hang out. She's like, okay. So we shared the hotel room, and she was asleep. And because I work with people that are all over the globe, so that means I do get phone calls in the middle of the night. And somebody had called me, and all day long I had told everybody, I'm going to be at my daughter's soccer tournament. I'm not available. If you are in trouble, if you're in danger, whatever, just text me 911. I will drop whatever I'm doing and I will contact you. So I had gotten calls throughout the day. And if it didn't come up 911, then, this was my daughter's time. I sat it aside, or I would text them to make sure they were safe. We got to the hotel room that night, and it was like 3:30 in the morning, and my phone rang, and I grabbed it, and it was someone that I had been helping, and they were pretty frightened. And I went into the bathroom so as not to wake my mom or my daughter. And I'm sitting in the bathroom with the door closed, and I'm talking to them, and I'm going, okay, this is why they're doing this. You're okay. And I'm just listening and trying to help them along as best as I could. I came out of the bathroom after being on the phone for like an hour, and my mom was sitting on the bed, and I apologized profusely. And I'm like, I'm so sorry I kept you up. And she looked at me and she went, this is all real. And I said, what? She said, all of it. It's real. Every bit of it. And I said, yeah, it is. And she said, your phone has blown up all day long with people trying to get hold of you. She said, I woke up on my own, but she said, I heard you in the bathroom. And she said, if it wasn't real, all these people wouldn't be contacting you. And I said, no, they wouldn't, And after that, it was like, she always believed me. I never felt like she didn't. She would just always say, I don't know anything about it. I know how she talks as ghosts, she doesn't know anything about the cryptids. And so, then of course she came to the house and they were knocking on it. She said, I got my confirmation. I'm good now.
But no, and I think that is important. So
I am so sorry. Somebody's letting the dogs out. I apologize.
No, that's fine. Trust me, I love animals on the show. If one of the dogs should show up, that's fine. If you have a cat, that's fine.
My husband is desperately trying to keep them quiet for me. God love him, but
no, they're fine. We love animals around here. Trust me, when Lon has his show and his cat Vinny jumps up, everyone goes nuts. So we love animals around here. So that's totally fine. So that's basically a normal day for you. Your phone continuously blows up. Like what do you do with the normal day? Could you give an example?
My normal day?
Yes. Like what types
of craziness. As soon as I get up, we have 17 dogs here. I have 13 that are mine, 4 that are my daughter's. her and her husband are staying with us temporarily while they look for a home. And so there's 17 dogs here. So I get up and and I have too many pigs, as well as I have cats. And then I have feral cats that I have caged. I have like 10 by 12 cages out there. So as I tame them, girls go in one cage, boys go in the other. So we can kind of slow down the wild feral cat population until I find them home.
Which is a good
thing. And so I get up in the morning and I'm on dog duty. And while I'm on dog duty, I'm on the phone. I have a dear friend of mine I check on every morning. So I'm talking to her and dealing with the animals. From that point, which is usually about 11 or 12, I am solid on the phone with either someone that wants to talk to me about their experiences or someone that I'm helping to work with their group or something involved with the cryptids. And my husband gets home about 4 o'clock. I have dinner with him, and then I'm generally back on it. It doesn't stop. It's a 7-day-a-week thing. Every now and then I'll be like, I'm burned out. I need a day off. I'll still talk to people, but I won't do as much as I normally do. But in that time frame, they're still walking by the window. They're still tapping on the window. Or, the mind speaking is all the time. My husband mind speaks and is heavily involved in all of this with me. He's a great partner. And he's tremendous at mind speak. So, one of us is getting something at all times, or there'll be a sighting of one of them in the backyard. I've had to let my one neighbor know that they were there because I didn't want her frightened. And so now they go by her house all the time. She's not as afraid of them as she used to be now. She just kind of lets them do their thing. But yeah, it's not like a 9-to-5 type thing ever. You don't make any money. I mean, I don't charge for anything that I do when I work with people. I am under the belief that if you can help someone, you should. We need more of that in all aspects of our life. And people have been there for me, so I try to make sure I can be there for them. I'm not always perfect at it, but I do try my best.
Right.
So yeah,
and
it's a cryptid world 24/7. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've had people come here that have seen him as well.
Is it a generational thing? You said your mom dealt with spirits and now you deal with cryptids. Do your kids see any of this? Do they?
Yes and no. All my kids, whether they choose to remember it or not, I don't think they were as thrilled about it as their mom was. They have seen them at some point in time in their life. Most of them just wanted to ignore it because, the stigma from their friends. And so we were very careful on what friends we were allowed to know about it because we didn't want, number one, I don't want the forest people hurt. I've been protecting and defending them since I was little. I will always continue to do so. But I didn't want my children ridiculed at school either. And so, I tried to keep them out as much as possible. My younger 3 were more involved than the other ones, only because by then I knew Igor Borsteff and he was out to the house. And he was where we would do bonfires and campouts and that kind of thing. So not with a lot of people, but with him and a couple others. And so they were more involved that way. Now everybody's grown up and they've got their own families and they aren't involved in it at all anymore. My daughter that's staying here, obviously her and her husband are involved to the extent that they see them. They don't go out and look for them, that kind of thing. My youngest daughter does have abilities and she wants nothing to do with them. She sees what I go through because, with the good, there's always the bad. I've been attacked, not by cryptids so much, but I have dealt with some bad ones for other people, but not here at my home. But I have been attacked by ETs. There's good ETs, there's bad ETs. And so, there's a lot. There's a lot that goes with it. And so does she see him? Yeah. Her and her husband have seen them multiple times here. So yeah, my mom never dealt with any of this. The only thing she ever dealt with were ghosts and spirits. I mean, she did that for years. She does it on a regular basis now. But she always has, and she always had the premonitions and that kind of stuff. So this part where I'm at with the whole, all the cryptids and the ETs and stuff, that's just been with me. I don't know why. Everybody asks me why. I have no clue. I don't know that there was ever a time that I wasn't, didn't have it. my last abduction was May that I'm aware of. I suspect a few things in between, but the last one was May.
Mm-hmm. There just has to be something maybe about your bloodline or maybe your mother's bloodline, because if she can
And they know
see
your
that,
heart. They know
yeah.
your heart. Like my mom, I've asked her so many times, and she's like, none of the things that you're involved with have I ever experienced, have I ever known about. When she was a
Mm-hmm.
kid, it was, you know, a time when they thought it was cool to do the seances, you know, and make the table rise. And she did that a couple of times, but she
Mm-hmm.
wasn't heavy into it. You know,
Right.
my aunt and uncle had a house that had a ghost in it. My mom, you know, saw the ghost there, but it wasn't something on a regular basis. And she
Mm-hmm.
never went out really and looked for it after the time she was a teenager. So, and it's not happened with my sister. It hasn't happened with my half brothers. It's just, for whatever reason, it's me. I don't know.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know.
That's
For whatever
the
reason,
question, right? Why you?
yeah, they
Why,
seem to
you
like
know?
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel really
Trust me, I
blessed
know that
because,
feeling.
yeah, I feel really blessed because I get to see
Mm-hmm.
a part of the world that, and there's thousands
Mm-hmm.
and thousands of people like me. I'm not the only one, but I'm fortunate enough that in this big grand scheme of things, I have been able to see and interact with what I have done.
Mm-hmm. And so, what is the main cryptid you deal with? Is it Bigfoot? Because you said you've dealt
Yeah,
with cat
usually. I
people
mean,
and.
yeah, I have most of the time it's the forest people. Yeah, it's the Sasquatch.
Mm-hmm.
I have dogmen that run around here too, and once in a while, you know, they'll speak or something. And I have a picture of a baby dogman, and I have another one that was here. But
Oh wow.
and we have a picture of the head. He's like a werewolf. He was coming out of a portal. And I have a
Mm-hmm.
picture of the cat people. I have pictures of dimensionals, a couple
Mm-hmm.
of ET pictures, UFO pictures.
Wow.
I have a photograph outside my garage where there's a triangular craft, and
Mm-hmm.
underneath of it is an open portal with the head coming out of it. And that's kind of a cool one.
Oh
I have a
wow.
picture of a beam coming down from a craft onto my bedroom,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So yeah, we found that if I go out in the woods and I don't like my photo taken, but if you take my picture, I'm out in the woods
Mm-hmm.
for a while. I don't know if they're still doing it, but for quite a while, you would usually find one popping up in the background.
Yeah. See, I've not, like I told you backstage, I've not had a Bigfoot encounter. I don't
Yeah.
think I have had a dogman encounter. I can explain this. So I do work with Lon, and Lon had sent my boyfriend and I out to this place in Johnstown. It's called Wilmore, and there had been a sighting. And it was like we got there and it was really eerily quiet. There was no bugs, there was no birds, and we were walking around. And he found these tracks, and he's a hunter. So he
Yeah.
knows his tracks, he knows his stuff, and he's like crouched down, like talking to himself, like it's not bear, it's not deer. He's like, what
Yep.
is this? And I'm just like standing there, like I don't know. I'm kind of useless when it comes to tracks. I don't know. Out of the corner of my eye, I see like this weird wings just moving, and it like something rushes towards me. And
Oh,
you know, like when
wow.
a person runs up on you, you
Yeah.
can kind of feel them. It was like that. And I thought, I got this thought in my head, like, if I don't scream, something bad's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I mean, I screamed so bad that he had a gun. He pulled his gun because he's a woodsman. He pulled it. He's
Yeah.
like, what? I'm like, I I saw something and I don't know what I saw. I'm like, I can't explain it. He's like, just calm down. I'm like, I saw something though. He's like, but there's
Yeah.
nothing. So,
There's
and
there's
it's
more
around,
cryptids than what we know of.
yeah.
I mean, we have some cryptids
Mm-hmm.
that were naturally born here. We have other cryptids that were ET created. We have other cryptids that were government generated. So you've got all of these things here. And years ago, I was told by the forest people that the ones that we have some here that I don't know what they are. We have this one
Mm-hmm.
it's big, and
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. It looks like a cross between an elk, a kangaroo, and a rabbit.
Oh
And
my
it moves
God.
through the bushes. Yeah, it's really weird looking.
Mm-hmm.
It's so bizarre, but it's not aggressive, and it can cloak. I've watched it cloak and come back in. But
Mm-hmm.
the Bigfoot had told me that what they do for the ones that don't have a name, they call it a Makaya, and it's a blanket term for thee that walks
Mm-hmm.
the earth that has no name. And so
Oh.
they would show me images of them in my mind, and I would draw it out, which I can't draw. I can barely draw an egg, but I would do the best I could with what they would show me in my head. And then within a few years, somebody would contact me and say, hey, I just saw this. I don't know what this is. And they would send me a picture, and it'd be the same thing, would match my drawing. So, and I would say, what is that? And they said, they would just call them a kaya, because there's so much out there that we don't know is out there. And I would get these bizarre pictures of these things out in the front yard or in the bushes or whatever. And you don't have a name for everything. You know, I've seen the little people, I've seen the fae. I've done all that, because what you find is everything is energy based. And so all these things have this intense energy, and it tends to draw them around each other, even if they aren't interacting. And there's places that the dogmen will not be where the Bigfoot are at. My experience has been a little bit different. And I know other people that have shared the same experience. It's not just me. Mine, even if they're not interacting with each other, share the same land. Like, we get both that come through my yard, and we've not had any where they're fighting with each other. I know there's other areas that are different than that, but I've talked to a lot of habituators that have noticed that pattern as well. So I think it just depends on the clan. It depends on the area, the location. You know, the thing that we have to remember with all of these they're all individual. They're all individualized. Everyone is different. Everyone has a different temperament. You know, like with the forest people, I think they're all predominantly good. I think there's more good than bad, but they are a type of people. I assisted on the Sasquatch Genome Project with Dr. Melba Ketchum, and she is now embarking on the Cryptid Genome Project, of which I will be helping her as well. And so that's now in full swing, and we do have some dogman samples, of course, always looking for more, and she's getting ready to start testing genomes on that. So, you know, but again, they are a type, the Bigfoot are a type of people. They may not be our type of people, but they are a type of people. The DNA proves it. And before I met Melba, before I knew about the study, they had already told me they were. You know, they were very adamant that they were not Nephilim. They get very angry when you call them Nephilim. And I asked them, I was out in the yard with them one day, and I said, what are you? And there was 3 of them standing there, and they said, they pointed to me, and they said, we're human like you. Then they pointed at the sky and said, and star people. Now, you know, in the DNA study, it does not say that. That's what I'm saying, because that's what they told me. So that's separate from the DNA study. The DNA study said that the mother's side was human, the father's side is unknown, because in order to clarify what it would be for that father's side, it has to match something in GenBank. And they don't have that kind of a DNA sample in GenBank. The government does, but it's not accessible for the scientists. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I will back her study with every breath of my body, because I know it's accurate. Even they said it was accurate. That's why I met her, was because they told me to find her. And I didn't even know she was doing a study at the time.
Oh, wow. And I'm just going to say this. I believe the government has much more than they let on. So there's that.
Oh, a lot. They are knee deep in their in with it. And they create various cryptids for military use and for other reasons, I'm sure, as well. They're no.
Yeah, I believe that. Now, I'm a big fairy person. I love the fae. I love stories about the fae. So, and you brought that up, so I'm going to have to hear your stories about them.
Well, I only had a couple experiences with the fae, and I was always told, you know, and I read energy. I do energy work. I have for years, and they are powerful. These fae are nothing to mess with. Like, you know, and the fairies, I've only seen a few of them. It's not like in the, you know, in your books, you know, they're not these delicate little, beautiful little creatures. They pack a punch. Both of them do. And they're not anything to play with. They have a lot of ability, a lot of power, and they are supposed to be neutral. But the problem when you're dealing with neutral, and this is my opinion from what I've learned. Okay. So other people may vary, but the neutral stuff, everybody would think, oh, that's good. You know, it's not, because the neutral, in my opinion, are more dangerous than knowing if they're good or if they're bad, because at least then you know where they stand. Right. When you have neutral, they could do anything at any time to anybody. both the fae and the fairy pack a punch. They really do. I mean, they've got a lot of abilities, a lot of strength to them. They've got a lot of power, and you really have to be careful with them.
Right.
You know, I interacted with them once, actually, and I, you know, one other time I did, but the longer of the 2 times that I did, they were very kind. I didn't have problems with them. But you know, you show a lot of respect, and, you know, you hope to God that they're going to be nice, and they were. I was
they're going to give it back, right? Yeah. No,
yeah. They're
I
not
remember
something you want to go up against.
Right.
You know, regardless of size, all of these cryptids, from what I have personally seen, they can all shapeshift. They all have abilities. The difference with the abilities when it comes to the Sasquatch they are all born with them. And people will come to me and say, well, this group over here, they didn't have any of them. They actually do have them. But we have Amish people that don't want to use electricity or modern day conveniences or those types of things. And the cryptids aren't any different. They are Amish people, but you have sectors that don't want to use those abilities. They may all still mind speak, but if they don't teach the children, hey, you have this ability, you can cloak, you can do this, you can do this, they don't know they have them. And I personally believe that we all have abilities, but we have been dumbed down because we've been told from the get-go that we don't have them. And if you don't know you have them, how are you going to use them? How are you going to know how to handle them or control them? Because you don't know you have them to begin with. And it's very similar when it comes to cryptids. So especially with the forest people, if their parents don't teach them that they have these things, they have no knowledge that they do, even though they do.
And so what, like, when you go out into the woods, say you're working case, how do you find them, or do they just come to you? Explain how it works.
I just walk through the woods. If I just did I was part of a documentary, Searching for Sasquatch, with Jason Kenzie, and in that, I was only supposed to be there for a short time, and they took all my interviews and they made it into a separate documentary. So I mean, it's out there. It's on Tubi, it's on Amazon. But when I went out there with them, of course, they were back in Michigan, so I went back to Michigan for it. I just go out in the woods. I go there with peace and love in my heart. I talk to them. I don't try to, what people say, you know, we're hunting for Bigfoot. I never went out and hunted for Bigfoot a day in my life. I just show up. I know what signs to look for, whether, you know, it'd be structures or whatever. And I talk to them. Even though you may not know how to recognize mind speak, they do. So if you speak to them in your mind, they're going to hear you. And so when I went down there for that, and we went into the woods, it literally took just a matter of minutes. And I had the night vision glasses, so I could see them with them. And I was letting them know, okay, you got one over here. This is his name. You know, he's going to go down this way. You can follow him. And he was very adamant. I think he was younger because he had to be an adolescent. He was very intent on making sure that we knew his family was there. You know, so if anybody were going to try anything, he was not by himself. But never felt any fear with them. Because I read energy, the aggressive ones, I can generally feel it. Yeah. Because it radiates differently. And not that I haven't been around some like that before, but the ones there that were there during the time of the show, they were wonderful. They really were. And we had a lot of them walking around. And then my friend Chad, who had actually invited me there. This was his project, and he had very graciously invited me there. And him and Jason and I went to another part of the woods. And I was like, okay, I can pick up the energy signature here, go that way. And you know, we could find the moving around. We would get them more on the night vision than anything. But yeah, I don't usually, like, I don't go in, the movie was Searching for Sasquatch, but it wasn't my movie. I don't like go out and try to hunt them down. I actually prefer to go out in the daylight so I can see the scenery. I've had more sightings during the day than I have at night. They're not nocturnal. They can be awake just like we can, anytime, day or night. Again, it's an individual. Every one of them is different, just like we are. Their looks are different. You know, I have people that come to me and say, well, in this area, they all have more of the conial heads, and this one, they don't. That very well may be, but if you look at, like, even in the United States, different states might have similar traits, but they move around. I mean, they don't migrate. That's a myth. They may follow the food source to go get food and then go back to their original home, but they don't migrate. But they do go through portals. I've watched the portals open. I've watched them move through the portals. I had an experience years ago where I actually very briefly went into one. And so it was not intentional. I didn't know that's what was going to happen. But so you can have one in Michigan and I'll be here in South Carolina, and in a blink of an eye, here they are. In a blink of an eye, they'll go back. You know, it's really that quick. So you end up like a melting pot of all these different shapes and sizes and colors, and they're every different color there is. Some of them have more than one color to them. And, you know, the facials, like I have one I'm very close to that has more of a human shaped head, and his hair, like a lot of them, you get the bald face, and their skin tones are different, anywhere from a Caucasian to a dark to anything in between. Some have got the grayer skin tone. This particular individual has a Caucasian skin tone, but he doesn't have bare skin on his face. There's not one spot on this point. He stood to like 10 feet from me, and there is not one spot on him that has not got hair. But his hair on his face and his neck, it was incredibly short, like maybe a quarter of an inch long, all over his face, into his ears, his eyebrows and his eyelids. Everything was covered in hair. But then when you got to his head, it was almost like it was greased or slicked back. And they do have a type of a grease, I guess, for lack of a better word, all over their hands. That's why their footprints or handprints are so hard to get off windows, because they have like that oil base. And they can go from physical form to spirit form in the blink of an eye, and they can be outside in spirit form, and you'll literally, and multiple people have seen this, not just me, and they go into spirit form and they're walking right through the wall and they're in the house. And we get handprints all over in here, and we have a photo that of a pillow, a black pillow, where there was this handprint on of them that they left in the bedroom. I was the only one home, and it wasn't there earlier. My husband came home and took a shower, and he's like, "Hey, so what's with the giant handprint on the pillow?" And I'm like, "There wasn't a handprint on the pillow earlier. I was just in there." Well, there is now, you know.
We'll find,
yeah. So but basically it's kind of like we put down ground rules. It doesn't mean they're going to follow them. All you can do is, in a respectful way, say, and this is what I tell them: if you are going to be here on our land or in the home or whatever, if you come with a pure heart and love in your heart and peace, you are welcome to stay. If not, I don't want you to leave. We don't have control over what they do. People say we do. I've yet to figure that part of it out, because they're pretty respectful when I ask things. They don't get intrusive, and I don't have problems with them. I know some people do. And they seem to respect what I ask, but that's just because of the group I'm interacting with. It's nothing to do with me personally. It's just I approach them with respect, and they send it back that way.
I'm not sure how comfortable I am knowing that they could walk through walls and come in the house. I did not know that.
The first time they did it, I had heard other people talk about that. And I thought, well, there's been times I've wondered, but I never really had proof. I was laying in bed one night. I was actually visiting someone out of state, and I was awake. I was wide awake. And it literally, he walked right through the wall, across the end of the bed, kind of looked at me like this, and then just kept right on walking on out the other side. And I was like, oh my God. And my husband and I have seen it happen multiple times. You know, they aren't like they're popping in and out 24 hours a day. I don't want people to get confused by that. It happens rarely, but it does happen. Outside, they're walking around 24 hours a day. They don't seem to be shy. We had, and I think it was like, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks ago, I might be off a little bit, but I was sitting here, and my husband gets up like at 4 a.m. for work. So he obviously falls asleep before I do. I'm more of a night owl, and he was sleeping, and the dogs were acting crazy. and they
Mhm.
ran to the window, and I thought, they don't freak out from deer, they don't freak out from cats, but whatever it was, they were torqued up, and then they like jumped back. I mean, it was just a riot. They all flew back from the window, and I thought, what in the world is going on? So I looked outside and I saw a deer, and I thought that there's got to be more out there, because they don't react like that to deer. They see them all the time. So I went into our sitting room, which is outside
Right.
my bedroom and by the foyer and the door, and this doe was out there, and I could see something walking on the other side of her. I immediately assumed a fawn, which we did find out later she did have a fawn. But I saw her out there, and I kept seeing little glimpses of a shadow. And I thought, what is going on? So she walked across the yard, walked down, and I'm on like a 2-track dirt road. She walked up the road, and she was standing across from the driveway. And there's a 200-acre tree farm across from me. And so she's standing over there on the side, and she's eating grass, and her tail is lightly very relaxed. And I'm like, I know I see a fawn over there. And I look at the end of my driveway, and honestly, and I mean no disrespect, it looked like a chimpanzee sitting at the end of my driveway. It was about 3 foot tall, sitting on its butt. It was a baby. And it's sitting there, and it's watching her, and she is completely immune to it even being there. It does the belly crawl, because they do that crab crawl where they go down on their belly and they crawl, and it went right up next to her on the ground, and she's still non-reactive. And I'm thinking, obviously they've tranced her, because they do know how to do the trancing thing. They've done it to me before, and I've watched them do it to animals all the time. And so I'm thinking, what's going on? So I did ask. I said, okay, what's going on? And they said, we're teaching. And I said, okay. So I waited a few minutes, and I said, what is this lesson? Because I assumed I knew what it was, but I wanted to find out. And they wanted their baby to learn how to stalk the deer. And so basically they had tranced this deer. And when they trance you, it's not like you're frozen and you can't move. Your brain reacts, but your body doesn't. Your body goes through the natural flow of things. But and when they did me anyway, I mean, I'm not saying that's everybody's experience, but this doe was like, he wasn't even there. And he did this belly crawl right up next to her. And he stayed right by her feet for the longest time before he went up on the bank of the road. And then he just walked into the woods. But it was quite exciting, because I was like, I don't have a statue at the end of my driveway. And it was like if a little kid was sitting Indian style, or you see like when you go to the zoo or whatever, and you see the chimpanzees sitting there on their butt with their knees in front of them, that's what he looked like. And when he wasn't very big. I mean, you could tell he was little, but he was cute, because he did the belly crawl right across.
Oh, I kind of feel bad for the deer. I mean, I know it's like the cycle of life, but I feel bad for the deer.
Yeah, they didn't hurt her. They never bothered. I mean, I don't believe they got her at all, because the next night she came in without them. But she still had fun with her, so they didn't take the fawn either. But they'll watch them. They've never killed any in my front yard, and I don't know if it's because they know I like the deer. I'm sure they get deer over here all the time, but I've not found it. Now I have had where I've seen them outside, the deer outside, and they ignore the deer and they don't bother them. But then there are other times that I go out there and I find a deer bone in my yard, and I'm like, okay,
as long as you don't have to see the gruesome part.
I don't. Yeah, I know how they do it. I'd rather not.
So what is the most, the most terrifying cryptid you have come in contact with? Because I know you said there's some.
I think
if you want to talk about it, that's fine. If you don't,
no, you're fine. There's one that they've been warning me about for years, and I know people that have seen it. I've not seen it yet. I've seen people that have drawn pictures of it and sent it to me and said, I don't know what this is. And I'm like, this is the same thing I drew 2 years ago at that time. But they've warned me about it, but I've not encountered it as of yet. I think probably when I get back to Michigan is when I will, because the sightings of them have come from there. I really haven't had a specific cryptid that scares me more than others. I mean, if they're being calm, if they're, not being aggressive, I don't feel fearful. The only time I get fearful is I don't like it if I'm out in the woods at night and they come up behind me and I don't know they're there. But I'm the same way if one of our people came up behind me in the woods, because I can't see. That bothers me. I'm not fearless by any means. Any of the aggressive ones I've dealt with, I'm not going to lie and say I wasn't scared, but I had to do what I had to do. But it doesn't mean you don't get scared. Walking out, like I can walk out in the middle of the night here outside and I'm not fearful. You know, I'm used to the ones around me, the dogmen, the Bigfoot, you know, the ET stuff. We've had a couple ETs that have shown up that are really bad and they scare, you know, they're scary and they make you scared. But I've also had just as many good ones come up that I just didn't have that issue with. So I think it just, for me, it depends on the situation more than the cryptid itself.
Okay, I see. I see Duke is in the chat. Hi, Duke.
I feel bad. I normally try to talk to him every day, and I have been swamped all week. It's been 2 days. Hi, sweetie. He has any of my pictures. If anybody wants to see any of my photos or the video of the UFO, everything I have, the first contact I make to send pictures to is Duke. So all my stuff goes up on his channel on World Bigfoot Radio on YouTube.
If he wants to put that in the chat, he can go right ahead and we'll put that up. So
okay, good.
Yeah, we'll put that link up if he drops it in the chat.
I love him. He is one of my closest, dearest friends.
He's very nice. Yeah, I was very happy when he came on. He was a wonderful guest. He interacts
with in Montana, and they absolutely adore him. He is very loved by his group.
Yeah, some of the stories he told, they were just amazing. They really were.
They're hysterical. And it's like every time he goes, he'll be like, you know, because he doesn't mind speak, and he'll say, ask them what they want. He's like the bacon king. He's got him obsessed with bacon. And God bless him, he buys it and he cooks it for him. So they get it cooked on top of it.
Oh, wow.
So every time I ask him, they'll give him like a shopping list of the things that they want, and bacon's always on top.
Who doesn't love bacon, though?
Yeah, he even brought him out toys at Christmas time. I mean, it's just awesome.
Peanut butter and bacon, he said.
Yes.
Let me just... So I can pop that. There you go. But yeah, so, and I had asked Duke this, but I'm interested in what you have to say too. Hang on, like I said, I'm still learning, so if I put something up and I don't mean to, bear with me. Why has no one ever found a body? Like, just a natural body? I mean, do they bury?
I will say this, I think probably people, and I'm just speculation. I think people probably have, however, nobody's going to come forward. You've got to deal with the government if you come forward with it. I know when I worked on the study, there were people that thought that they had it or they had it, and then they would just quietly go away and we would never hear from them again. But to begin with, they bury their dead. They will do a funeral. They have a certain way that they place the body. They have certain rituals that they do when they die. They don't give up their dead easily. Like if they have to fight you for their dead, they will. But they do bury them. And I mean, and if there is occasionally one that doesn't get buried, which is very few and far between, if ever, look at the decomposition on anything in the woods. How often you find a dead bear or a dead cougar? That's rarely. It's not that it doesn't happen, but rarely. But in their particular case, they, again, they're a type of human, not an animal any more than we are. And they will be very protective of their dead, of the grounds that they bury their dead on. And they do. They will have funeral. They observe 4 days of silence afterwards when one passes, out of respect. And they will bury them. They will put a structure. Not all structures are on graves, so don't anybody go out thinking that's a grave. There's certain ways that they'll make a structure for them. They'll put rocks on them. I've seen where they've had graves where they've taken trees out of the ground and replanted it on top, or they'll plant flowers on top so that people don't realize that it's a grave. They've had me go to various places and bless the graves and do various things like that. So they're not easily found. They are by somebody that would know what to look for, maybe, but not even, I don't care who you are, how good you are at spotting their graves. There's ways that they will do it where you wouldn't even know.
So you could be walking on top of it in the woods
and
absolutely. You wouldn't know.
Absolutely.
Now, do they have cemeteries, or do they just basically bury wherever?
The ones that I have gone where they've had me go to bless them, they were, I don't want to say it's a cemetery, but maybe that particular clan would bury their dead there. I do know of some places where there's been an individual gravesite there for whatever reason, but to say 100% with clarity. I can't say that they're all in like a Bigfoot cemetery type area, but I have known them to bury a lot. Like one clan might use this area to bury their dead. At, you know, there's been again, you go back to the individuality of the clan. Some of them might take theirs and bury theirs far away, one here, maybe one over there. It comes down to that individual clan from what I've seen.
See, I wasn't sure really how that worked and everything. That's why I thought.
Yeah,
just ask.
but they will hold an actual funeral. They have, you know, different things that they do in honor of the ones that pass.
And I, like you said, you didn't like the word cemetery. I wasn't sure what word they would use.
No, but I mean, that's for lack of a better word, that's what we would call it for our people. So, I mean, I think the word suited it perfectly. You know, I don't know that they would call it that, but that, I mean, for us, that's what we would call it. Yeah,
exactly. I was like, so what would they, I was trying to form the question, like, what should I call it? So I'm just like,
no, I mean, I thought that explained. Yeah, I thought that explained it beautifully. Bernadette. So I think that was good.
Okay. So I do have some questions for you.
Sure.
If you don't mind taking them.
No, that's fine.
Let's see. Boulder Nelson Bigfoot says, let's get this up here. Let's hope I did that right. There it goes. It is real, but why? But what?
I think is he meaning what? It's actually a human hybrid. It's a type of an ancient people. It is not, to be clear, it is not our type of people, but they are a type of people. These are people that have their own language, their own culture, their own laws. They have their own alphabet. They can read. They can do all of these things that we do. It's just not our ways. Okay, so just because it's not our ways does not take anything away from them being a people. They are. They have their own language, but they can speak ours as well. You know, the ones in Russia, when I was in Russia for the conference, they spoke to me in Russian. And I had to tell them, I can't do that. Like Igor Burstov tried for years. I can't do it. I'm illiterate when it comes to Russian. And so they would then switch it over and speak to me in English so that I could understand. So they can speak any language they want, but they do have their own language as well. But they are definitely 100% a human hybrid. They are not Nephilim.
So were they here before the Native Americans?
Yeah, they were here before us, I think, as far as I can see.
Okay. That was going to be my question. Like, I wasn't sure if they were after
and,
or
you know, not all tribes, but they, for the most part, we find that they got along very well and they interacted as well as traded with the Native Americans. There were tribes they did not, that actually they were enemies with. They tried to steal each other's children. They had territory lines that neither one would cross. So again, and I hate to sound like a broken record, it depends on the individual clan, the location, and what the beliefs of that clan were.
Oh, no, you're fine. Trust me. So Jose wants to know, what is a habituator?
A habituator is,
right? Yeah.
Yeah, a habituator is someone that lives, for lack of a better term, among them. They may not live on that property, but they interact with the people that do. So in my case, I was a habituator because I did know where their actual home was. And they would come to my property daily, on and off throughout the day, on and off throughout the night. And I would interact with them. So that's where the habituator comes from. You have constant interaction with a clan or clans. In my case, it was more than one clan. Same thing here. I've got 3 or 4 clans here. Plus, I have some that followed from Michigan. And you have that constant interaction. It's not just, oh, I have a sighting here, a sighting there. You are actively sharing land with them. You're actively interacting with them. And there's some sort of communication, whether it's mind speak, whatever you want to call it. You don't have to necessarily be feeding them. The one in Michigan, I fed them all the time. I don't recommend it because when you stop, they can get pissed. Now, mine didn't. I was very lucky. If you're going to go out, like with Duke, perfect example. He's not out there every day. So when he does go there and he takes food, it's fine. They know that when he comes, he's going to bring something that's wonderful. But should he show up empty-handed, they may be kind of mad, but they're not going to attack him and hurt him because they don't expect it. You know, that's just something as a gift. So when you habituate, you're interacting. You know, they leave gifts for us. We leave gifts for them. We mind speak with them. They're, you know, tapping on the windows. They've been very helpful. We had a couple of trees down and they were helpful. I said, you know, could really use the assistance, and kind of went on my way and left it alone. And I came back and they had moved it for me. So, you know, that's that interaction where it's consistent. It's over time. It's built on a mutual respect between those people and the forest people. And I think people are shocked when they realize how many habituators there are. There are thousands. Just because they're not all on shows, not just because they're not making it public, does not mean that they are not doing it.
Right. All right, let me get that down. And another one from Jose is, let me get that back up there. Okay. Do you think Bigfoot might be an ET experiment?
The mother side is human. The father side, according to the actual forest people themselves, what they told me was that they are star people. And we do know that well, there's been thousands of them that are now born here, but in the beginning, they were created by the ETs. People have seen them on ships still. There's been various ET races that have admitted to it. That doesn't mean that the government doesn't try to do their little petri dish thing and make things as well, but they would create ones that are more aggressive to be used as far as for the military. Those are not your original Bigfoot. Do I think some could have been born on this planet and came from this planet? I think it's entirely possible. The DNA that we get does show the mother side is human, the father side is unknown. And again, when I spoke to them and I asked them, they did not hesitate. They absolutely did not hesitate. And we have asked, my husband Pat and I, because he is knee deep in this with me, we have asked multiple clans, multiple states, multiple places across the globe, and they've all said the same thing, that that's where they were created.
Okay. So I'm going to, before we continue on with the question, I'm going to ask, you said your husband is basically knee deep in with this and he communicates as well. Is this something you taught him, or is it something he learned, or?
Both, actually. I met him because someone that I had worked with and helped with interaction with the ones around them said, I have this friend. He's a great guy. His name is Pat McCray. He's already having experiences, but he really could use somebody to talk to them about it. I didn't teach Pat. It just, everything is a progression. Pat was already experiencing things when I met him, but he didn't have anybody to share them with that could say, oh yeah, you know, I believe you, or yeah, they did this for this reason or that reason. So he was already on that path anyway. And we talked for almost 2 years before we first met, or before we actually saw each other. And we've been together ever since. And he's just right alongside me. You know, everything is a learning experience. It's one of those things that it's a progression, and it will progress through your entire life. I'm not done learning. I learn from everybody, you know, and hopefully people can learn a little from me. And it's that give and take. So, and Pat, God knows that since he came into my life, he's been dealt more than I'm sure he probably ever wanted to. But
aren't they all? I mean, let's be honest. Anyone who gets involved with someone in the paranormal, they get in deeper than they expect.
He got sent down that rabbit hole, and we've yet to find the bottom of it. So, but he interacts with them, you know, just as much as I do.
Okay, because I was curious about that, because it seems interesting. Like you two found each other, and you both have the same gift. And
Bigfoot dating service. Let me tell you,
nice.
They put people together that they want together. I do healing work and stuff on them, and it works out really well because Pat and another dear friend of mine are both of them the best mind speak people I've ever, you know, worked with. I trust them explicitly. And so when they do send me out to places to do various things, it's great because I have 2 other people that can verify it to make sure that I'm getting it right. Nobody's foolproof. But that way we know that if all 3 of us are getting the same thing, then the chances are we're on the right path. But it is a progression. Pat had started long before he ever met me. I'm sure there's days now that he wishes he didn't, but he says that's not true. But yeah, he's incredible, and he deals with a lot of the paranormal. And then as we were together, like I would trigger things and he would start having memories of things that happened when he was 9, or with ETs or with other, cryptids or whatever. So yeah, like I said, it's all a progression. He didn't need me to do it. I just was his trigger that reminded him of things.
And that's always a business you can go into later, down the road, like Bigfoot dating service, and just,
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
that
They put people together. Like, I would never take credit for anything that Pat's learned or his abilities. He's got some amazing abilities. Like I said, mind speak wise, he's off the chart. And so it's fantastic, because then we kind of feed off each other, and so, yeah, it works
really
out
nice.
good.
That really is sweet.
And I think if you are really heavily into this, you have to have, like, I was married before. It clearly does not work if you don't have a partner that is as involved in this as you do, because they just don't understand it. They say they will, but they don't. And my ex-husband was very well aware that they were there. And I don't necessarily know that he liked it or he didn't like it, but somebody asked him one day, what do you think about them coming there? And they said, they're not here for me. Are you crazy? They're here for her. And he was so angry about it. I'm like, I didn't try to do any of this. I've never once went out in search of, they found me as a small child. And we have this relationship that it's based on mutual respect and love. It doesn't mean that that's going to be like that with everyone out there, because again, individuals, my core group, it is, but we do okay.
Yeah. It sounded like a jealousy type of anger, if you ask me.
It was.
Oh, okay.
Notice he's not here, and Pat and I are very happily married now. So.
Oh, good. Good. I'm glad. Okay.
They were thrilled.
Right.
Jose, actually, I have seen what people call a rake, whether or not that's the technical term. I had 2 that came after me and had a very horrifying experience with them. Yeah. Okay. I personally don't think a rake is a cryptid. I think it's a form of ET that lives on this planet. I don't even know that. I mean, people call them a rake. I can't say, that's what their name is. I don't know. But yeah, I've been attacked by them before.
Okay. I took that down because I felt like you didn't really want to talk anymore about it.
No, I don't mind. No, okay. That was perfectly fine. That was, anybody can ask me anything they want. If I don't know the answer, I don't have a problem saying, hey guys, I don't know. I don't know at all. Okay. I don't. So no, they can ask whatever they want, but the rakes are not something to be messed with. And I was forewarned they were coming by the forest people. Thank you. And so that made all the difference in the world as far as me coming out of it.
Right. So the next question is from Marla, and let me get that up there real quick. Is there a name for their language?
Marla, yeah, if there is a name for their language, Marla, other people may know. I don't know. I do know that the language of some is not necessarily, how do I explain it? The language of others, because like where I lived at in Michigan, I lived on an area that was Ojibwe land at one point in time. And someone I knew was in a different area, and hers had talked and told her different words in Native American tongue. And when I used it on mine looked at me like, what are you talking about? And it had nothing to do with her. She was being 100% honest. I believe her completely. But it was 2 different languages, because it would have been 2 different tribes. As far as what they call their language, be honest with you, I've never asked them. So for their specific language, I know when they talk, it almost sounds like gibberish, because it's very, very quick, very difficult to understand. Now, like with Ron Moorhead, the Sierra Sounds, most beautiful piece of work, I think, of their language I've ever heard in my life. And you can hear English in there. But when we speak, it comes from the upper part of our throat. Theirs comes down in the clavicle area. So it sounds different even when they say it. And they have a much wider range, where ours is limited. Theirs goes much deeper and much higher.
Okay. So when they're speaking, say when you encountered the Russian Bigfoot, how did they sound? Do they sound normal, like someone speaking Russian, or?
It sounded like when they talked to me, it was not in their native language. It was in Russian, probably thinking, this is a person, she's going to know this. And it sounded Russian, but it was very guttural. I mean, it was really gurgled down in the throat. So I couldn't understand it to begin with because it was Russian, and that just made it even harder. So when I had to say, listen, I can't understand that, and please speak in my language, they did. It was like a broken English.
Oh, okay.
And when you hear them talk in mind speak, it's more fluent. But when you hear them talk in real, with your ears, it does almost, some of it can sound broken. Not all of it, some of it.
Okay. Because I was wondering, when you said they speak from down in here, how it would sound if they were, speaking
Yeah,
Russian.
I've heard some come from a very high octave, but a lot of them, it's all very deep and guttural. It comes from the chest. It's like the chest almost vibrates.
Oh, wow. That would kind of scare you if you weren't prepared.
Well, my next door neighbor, I had let her know, I'm here. I know they're here. We've had evidence they were here from the first time we looked at the house. And at some point in time, they're going to be in your yard. I want you to be aware of it. Don't go running in and grabbing a gun. This is a war you don't want to fight because you're going to lose. It's just not going to happen. If you're fearful of your life, if they're being aggressive, I understand the need to defend yourself, but don't start out at that point. And so her adult son was out in the backyard cleaning up some brush. He went to throw it into the woods, and there was a large male standing there. And he said it made like a growl noise. But sometimes when they do that growl noise, they're not actually growling. They're saying, hi, and it sounds so guttural that you assume. And so he ran in the house and he said, Mom, give me the gun. She said, for what? And he said, there's this thing out there. And she said, oh, no, Robin already warned me. We're not fighting with them, no gun. And he went back outside, and he said that he was funny because I talked to him afterwards. And he said, it was gone in a blink of an eye. And I said, they can go on two legs or they'll go down on all fours. Did you see it leave? And he said, that was a crazy thing. He said, as thick of the brush as there was back there, I never saw a leaf move. I never saw the grass move. It was just gone. And I said, it never left. It cloaked.
Oh, wow.
And he's like, he just about lost his mind. But they've had several of them that they've seen walking through our yard at the back. Because my house is more towards the front of the land, where her house is at the back. So they come across the backwoods from back there and into our property. And her grandson have seen them several times come up through there. Then they steal her flower pots, and I find them in my yard and I have to take her flower pots back.
That's something like, I'm missing my flower pot and they're just like stealing it randomly.
Yeah. And like she burns her trash there where I don't, but she does. And for the longest time, they would go to the far side of my property, and I walk back there and there's all these bottles of Orange Crush, and they were stealing the Orange Crush. And if there was a bottle that wasn't empty, they would get that and they take it over. They had an area they'd sit with all of it.
So is that like their preferred drink? Was there any?
No,
left?
it was just what they had. Okay. They get stuff out of ours as well.
So in a way, they're kind of like bears. They scavenge garbage at times.
Oh, they will. They'll get in the dumpsters all the time. Yeah. It's an easy meal.
Yeah.
I don't think they throw it
I've
around
lived around bears, so yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Mortal Clown said, do they have pets? They absolutely have pets. They will find if there's stray dogs, stray cats, they'll use those. They also very typically will use whatever animal is in the forest. We have 3 that come through here every once in a great while, and they have a cougar that's a pet.
Oh, wow.
Coyote, it's very common for them to use coyotes or wolves, pet raccoons, whatever's out in the woods. If they can find it as a baby, it becomes a pet. Absolutely.
So they basically domesticate it then?
Absolutely. Yeah, they really and truly do. I've seen it multiple times. And I've talked to multiple people that have seen them out and about and had them have a coyote per se running with them, or was carrying a raccoon, or a small dog because it happened to be a stray. Or in where I live, there's nothing but feral dogs and cats. And so they're constantly getting pets from that. I want to, while we're talking about the pets, there's so much of a myth that they're so dangerous for pets. And again, it comes down to the individual. Don't think it's a Bigfoot thing. I have 17 dogs. I have probably 20 cats here because I work with all these ferals. And I have too many pigs. They have never once in my life harmed one of my animals. Never. That doesn't mean they haven't called my dogs out in the woods with them, but they brought them back.
Well, that's good to know that, it depends on who it is.
No, they bring things and they toss it in the yard with my dogs. In fact, I just did the pork and bean show today with my husband, and we were talking about that. And all the animals that are white are sacred to them because white is supposed to be pure. And we have a Great Pyrenees, which is pure white. And they love all the dogs, but she is their baby and she loves them. Oh my gosh. As soon as they come up to the fence, she's right at the fence, wagging her tail, barking, all happy that they're there. But they bring stuff and they toss it in the backyard in the fenced in area so they can play with it. And I walk out every day because the snakes here are so prevalent. And I do a walkabout in my backyard to make sure there's no snakes out there. There's nothing out there that other than their toys that they could get hurt on. I did it one day. I walked in the house. 15 minutes later, I look out back and the Pyrenees is running around with a 2x4.
Oh,
I mean, a
goodness.
2x4. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Or they'll go and swipe shoes that somebody might have on their back porch and they toss them in my yard, in the backyard, so the dogs can play on the shoes. I'm like, you're going to get me in trouble. Or they'll go get stuff off somebody's clotheslines and I'll wake up in the morning and their clothes are on my porch. And I'm like, thank you for the gift, but like, I'm going to end up in jail. Will you just stop?
Right? Like stealing someone's laundry. That's so,
I know,
that's a very weird crime. I'm not going to lie.
I know. And it's like, what do you do? Like, if I can't go take them to the neighbors, number one, I don't know where they came from. And two, they're going to think I'm stealing from them.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my goodness. So Jose says, let's get that up there. What is the average lifespan? They can live hundreds of years.
Yeah. A lot of the ones that we talk to say anywhere from 200 to 400 years that they live. My own thought on this, and I have nothing to back this up, I'm just putting that out there. When they seem to, what I've noticed is when you have some that per se don't use a lot of the paranormal abilities, aren't in because they are a multi-dimensional being. Okay. So if they're not going through the dimensions, if they're not in the portals a lot, they seem to have more of a shorter lifespan because they stay more flesh and blood all the time. Now, whether or not that's true, I don't know. That's just what I've observed. But I know some that say that they're 300 and 400 years old. I think an average lifespan would be easy to say 100 to 200, but there are some that live longer than that.
Can you tell by looking at them? I mean, like if you look at a human, you can tell
some of them. Yeah. They come in all colors. And just because you see a white Sasquatch does not mean that they're old. Okay. It also doesn't mean it's an albino. You tell if they're an albino by the color of their eyes and their skin tone, not by their hair color. So that would be like saying that somebody with blonde hair is an albino. No, they're not. They just color their hair, but they will get gray. Their hair does turn gray. It doesn't mean that everyone is going to turn gray. I've seen some that have said that one told me he was 320 years old. And you could tell when he walked, he was quite old because he was kind of more, bent over a little bit, but he still had reddish color hair.
It was just in his gait that you could tell he was old.
Yeah. I think it's more the way they move. But we have a female here that, I want to say she's in her 30s, and she had a baby right after we moved in. And when she came, he was out in the front yard, and I was standing on the front porch with someone that was a friend that was staying with me. And I don't like to give anybody's names because I haven't had permission to, so I'm not trying to be evasive. But we were on the front porch, and the female ran through and came up the side of the house. And when she did, she dove into the bushes where the youngster had went, and she had salt and pepper colored hair, but she wasn't old, so it's really hard to tell. So for me, I think I can tell more by the movement, the mobility that they have more so than the hair coloring.
Excuse me. Tina wants to know, do they laugh, or their facial expression similar to ours?
And they have a wicked sense of humor. They love to laugh. They are extremely funny. They think warped sense of humor is their motto. It's like when they do the belly crawl, they'll go up through the tall grass right behind you and knock your legs out from under you so they drop you on your butt. And they think it's funny. They don't do it to be mean. They think it's funny. You know, they'll do a lot of crazy things thinking they're funny, even if we don't. But yeah, and they laugh a lot.
I like a warped sense of humor, so I think I'd get along good with them.
They're hysterical. They'll set you up so that you think one thing, and then they'll pull, you know, say, no, it's this, and then they laugh. Or they'll do something, and we'll ask them and say, hey, did you just do that? And instead of an answer, you hear laughter. And I'm like, I'm going to take that as a yes.
Oh, okay. And this is from Tina again. Do they have laws and negative sanctions for violations, and do they have religion? That's a really good question.
It's a phenomenal question. They actually do have their own laws. They do have laws that are supposed to go out throughout the clans, but just like we have like our federal laws through the states, then we have our state laws, which can vary state to state. It kind of works like that with them in the clans. Like they do have a set of laws that their people don't go against, but at the same time, each individual clan will create their own laws. As far as religion, to say, are they Catholic, Protestant, Methodist? No, but they all believe that they are children of God or of Creator, which is our God. And they have told us, many different clans have told us to multiple people, not just myself and Pat, that they believe in Creator. They answer to Creator, and Creator is the same as our God, that we all have the same Creator. They are very spiritual. And, you know, just like we do have some people in our world that are perhaps an atheist or whatever and have their own belief system that may be different than ours, they do as well. Primarily, they all believe that they are children of God, and they are very religious, and they do worship.
Do they have churches, or like do they
I don't
make
necessarily
structures
know
like churches?
You know, that's a good question, Bernadette, because I don't know if they do or they don't. What I can tell you is what I observed at my home in Michigan. They brought in logs, and they were rectangular shape. And inside this rectangle, they had various different types of structures. One was a teepee structure, and I would go out and sit and watch them at night, and they would chant there. And that whole vibe of it was the feeling of what I would get when I went to church. And there would be several that would come every night, and they would go into this teepee chanting, and they would vanish. So obviously the teepee, when I went in there, you could feel the energy fluctuating in there. So they would use that as some type of a portal. And not all teepees do that. It was just that, you know, a few of them do. But they would go there, and the entire thing, they would talk in their own language. But everything about that felt like they were going there to worship.
Okay. That makes sense in a way, too. That really does.
Yeah.
Because then there are other religions that just say if you walk in the woods, that's basically that can be your church.
Your church.
Religion.
And I haven't noticed that here, but I did notice that, but only at that one house in Michigan. I didn't notice that at any of the other places I lived, and they've been around me everywhere I've ever lived.
And it could be just like you say that. It could be just like you say. It could be that group of, you know, Sasquatch that do that way. And,
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Jose, I didn't already ask us. Well,
yeah. Again, they answer to Creator. They believe in that higher power. They believe in Creator, and they don't have, like I said, there's no like a Catholic or Protestant or whatever type of religion, because we are the ones that created that. So that doesn't have any effect on them, but they do believe in the higher power, and their higher power is the Creator, which is also our God. So we're basically all worshiping the same thing.
Karen Peterson wants to know, do you think they can change their vibrational frequency?
Oh, definitely. That's how they do things. When they go, there's two things. They do the cloak and the shimmer. The shimmer is what looks like that predator effect, like that gelled water that you see. The cloaking is completely transparent. You don't see them at all. When they do this, they do it by bending light. And the way they bend the light is they raise their vibrational frequency and energy. And by energy, I don't mean your physical energy, like when you get up or when you go play a game outside. This is a different kind of energy. It's more of a spiritual type energy. And we all have it in our body, every one of us. It doesn't matter if you have chronic fatigue syndrome or whether you are a high-powered athlete. You all have that energy base inside of you. We all are energy beings. And so it's different than a physical energy. But when they go to do various things, and especially their paranormal abilities, it's all done by raising that vibrational frequency and their energy. It controls everything they do.
Okay. And Karen, there's a question from her. Let's see. Do you think the white residue they leave, or what do you think the white residue they leave behind is? I wonder if it plays a part for camouflage.
My own personal feeling is it doesn't play a part in the camouflage, but I wish I knew what that was. And for anybody that's ever encountered it, it's really crazy because they've done tree drawings for me using that white residue. And at times they actually left some in the day that we found that Pat found the handprint on his pillow. That handprint was made with that white residue. And it was almost like a powder. It had the consistency that you would feel in powdered sugar, but it doesn't go away. That pillow was 2 years later before we could get it to wash off. But they also have that waxy feeling on their skin that when they leave the fingerprints and stuff, that's why it's that waxy residue. That white powder, I don't know why I never thought to have it tested because they've left it on a great many things here. Yeah. And I just never thought to do it. I don't know why I didn't. They put it in my head not to have it tested. And I know other people have had the same feeling, why didn't we test it when we had the chance? So I don't know what it is. I do know what it feels like.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that, have you ever went to have it tested or anything?
I didn't. I really didn't. When they did it on the tree, they drew a teddy bear on a tree. And then they drew pictures of ET, floating ET heads around a Sasquatch. And it didn't wash off with the rain. But yet they went, like, I was out in the woods when it happened. And I walked by the tree. It wasn't there. I turned around because something told me to go back to the tree. I went back to the tree and there it is. So I took photos of it. And I went back on my walk thinking I'd go back later. And it started to rain. So as I went in the house, I saw it still on the tree. It didn't leave. And then I went back out after the rain quit. It was still there. And 45 minutes later, I went back. It was gone. And I know it doesn't wash away because we tried to wash this pillow. Yeah. We couldn't get it off. 5 years ago, we moved into this house and there's still handprints on the windows that were here when we moved in. That I can't get off. Wow. And they would leave it on our cars and everything. And you could go through the car wash and you still couldn't get it off.
I wonder if it's something they like excrete through their skin.
I believe it is. I believe it's just part of their body, the waxy, oily thing. I think it reminded me of, and I'm not saying that's what this is, but this is what it reminded me of. When you have a baby, that waxy coating that's over the baby when it's in utero. And you have the baby and they wipe it out. That's what it reminds me of. And it's like they have it all over their hands, their skin, everything. And that, I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm saying that's what it reminds me of. But this white powder that everybody talks about, I don't know where they get it. I don't know how they get it. But that's different than the wax on them. And when I felt it, it felt to me like powdered sugar. That was the closest thing I could ever relate it to.
I mean, I also wonder, too, if it's like they're marking their territory, if it's like a pheromone.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, that's just really
it's like
weird.
I think they call it the Vernex, the wax that is on the babies. But it was crazy.
I can't remember. It's been a long time.
Yeah, my kids are all grown.
I have a almost 5-year-old. He'll be 5 in September, and then I'm due in September. So
good for you.
I'll be going
through
it again. Not yet. No, we're gonna find out soon.
Oh, congratulations!
I have a guess of what we're gonna have, but until I'm 100% sure, I'm not saying. So, thank you.
Congratulations!
Yeah, we're excited. We're nervous, but we're excited.
Yeah.
Okay, and so let me put this one up. Clown wants to know: do they sing?
Yes, they actually do. They do. And I hear them sometimes, because I sleep with my window open, always have. I mean, there's a screen in it, but when I lived in Michigan, I didn't have a screen in. My cat had torn the screen out, and I had my bed by the window, and they would reach their hand in at night and they'd play with my hair. And I'd wake up in the morning with mud and leaves in my hair. Now where the bed's at, we have 2 windows, and the bed isn't up against the window, but I keep the window open on one with the screen in it, and I can hear them out there singing or chanting. I know when I've been extremely sick, they show up and they chant. When I get sick, they go outside my window and they chant, and immediately, like within a matter of hours, I start feeling better. But yeah, they actually do sing. They do sing.
So like basically a healing ritual for you.
Well, yeah, it was for me, and they do it for a lot of other people. It's not just a me thing. But I've actually heard them out in the woods, and you can hear them singing. I don't always understand what they're saying, but they do.
If somebody were out in the woods, what would you link it to? If you could link it to something for someone who's never encountered a Bigfoot. When
it was in their language, it just sounded like someone was singing, but it was so fast and the words all blended together, so you couldn't make it out. But it sounded like a song. It really did. You know, I have not really heard them do a whole lot in English, a little bit of one word here or one word there that might be in English, but you can definitely tell it's a song. It's someone singing. I mean, it's very evident when you hear there's a beat to it, there's a rhythm to it. So you absolutely know that that's what they're doing.
Okay. And one last question from Jose. Common question. Bigfoot experiencers say that they smell really bad, like blood or rotting flesh. I've not heard the blood, but I've heard the rotting flesh.
Yeah, I've heard that before. I will say that a lot of it is personal hygiene. Most of them actually do not smell. You might smell a little bit of a dirt smell, but a pleasant smell. It's clean. We have one here that we are exceptionally close to and very blessed to have that came with us from Michigan. And Pat and I were just talking about this the other day. He has a little bit of a dirt smell, but it's a clean smell. They can, if they are really wanting to scare you or do whatever, they can turn it on and off. But most of the time, it has a lot to do with personal hygiene. I've seen some where they literally have feces hanging off of them, you know, and then I have seen others that they will brush their hair out till it shines and just immaculate. You know, they'll bathe. They have no problem with the water. They swim quite well. And so, you know, they will bathe. When they have the babies, the first thing they want to do is get them in the water and clean them off. They are not a filthy human, you know, but if you realize that in our race of humans, we have people that could care less what their body odor is. Let's be real. You know, they don't bathe very often. You know, you go by them and you want to take a can of Febreze and just hose them down, or, you know, say, walk by a hose, garden hose will hose you down. It's the same with them. There's so many similarities. So I believe that there are some that have smelled like that. I absolutely do. Yes, 100%. But again, it's not because it's a Bigfoot. It is because that individual has poor hygiene, or that individual may have just had a kill and they've eaten and they have not cleaned up yet. It could be that they are going to they project emotions and smells at you. And it doesn't mean that they are the ones that smell like that. Okay. There's a difference in them wearing that smell and then projecting that smell. There's a big difference. And they used to, when we'd go out in the woods, my ex-husband would go out in the woods and he would smell coffee. They would follow him around with a coffee smell. So
that's not a bad smell to smell. I'm not going to lie.
So they can project smells at you and they can project emotions at you. So there is that big difference.
So
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. You go ahead.
Now, the other night, Pat and I were laying here, and I think it was 2 nights ago. We were laying in bed and we were watching TV, and this horrifying smell, it was like a wet dog swamp smell, just wafted in the window. And Pat looks at me and I'm looking at him and I'm like, I'm going to gag. And I made the comment, I said, I don't know who's out there, but like, cut it back. This is bad. And the smell instantly went away, like immediately was gone. And like 20 minutes later, the smell came back. And I said, I don't find that funny. And I hear laughter in my head. And then the smell went away again. So they can turn it on and off. They know what they're doing.
So say you're in the woods and you get like this uneasy feeling. Could that be them projecting,
Absolutely,
this feeling to get you out of there?
Yes. When you go, people will say, they contact me all the time and they're like, oh, they did this thing and I'm terrified. And I'm like, okay, did they physically touch you? No. Did they hit you with a log? No. Okay. What did they do? Well, they yelled and they waved their hands in the air. First of all, that means surrender in our military. When their hands are waving in the air, that's surrender. That's not being mean. They are steering you away from a situation. Either you're too close to their family, you're too close to where they're hunting, or, and I find this in at least 50% of the cases, once I talk with that individual, there was a bear, there was a cougar, there was something that could have harmed our human. And they're trying to steer you away. So there are signs to listen to. They will also do what they call the wall of fear, which is they take that fear emotion and they project it onto you. And that's why you get that feeling. So if you go out in the woods and you're out there and you feel at peace and you feel comfortable, that's your cue that you're okay. If you get that feeling of dread, of nervousness, something, whether it's a Bigfoot, a dogman, a cat person, a goat man, whatever's out there, they are giving you that to let you know that you are no longer in a safe place, whether it's from them or something else. They don't normally, there are, like Gugwe and stuff that want to kill everybody, but they normally would just as soon get you to move away from them than have to have that altercation. So we need to listen to the signs, feel the signs. If that energy shifts and you go from great to not so great, don't sit there and think that, well, I'm bigger and tougher, I'm going to go out there and follow them around. They're being kind to you by giving you that so that you know enough to leave. Take your cue and simply walk away.
Exactly. Yeah, I had that fear a few times when I've, wandered around the woods and I just turned around and walked back. But it just came on so sudden. I'm like, I've been here before. It's
because something was there that didn't want you there at that time. Doesn't mean you can't go back later.
Right.
A mutual friend of Duke's and I, he went out to an area that he normally goes in, always has been peaceful, and it felt terrible, just felt awful. So he left and he called me and he said, that's my area. That's where I always go. It's always so good. Now it's not. And I'm like, give it 2 weeks. Let's give it 2 weeks to let whatever was going on. You could have just been there at the wrong place, wrong time. He went back in 2 weeks, he had an encounter, and that was peaceful, that was loving, and that he enjoyed.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree. You should always listen to those too, those feelings, because like you said, you never know why you're feeling it too.
Exactly. Absolutely.
I have one last question, and because it seemed like a good one, because I've never heard of this. Davy Jones Locker wants to know, what is the reason for tagging?
It varies. It can be that they like you, they like the energy you radiate. And the tagging is more of just a connection that they make with you. And if they like you, they're going to follow you. But in the same regards, if you have gone somewhere and you've ignored all their signs and now you're in an area where you could be a possible threat to them, you're going to get tagged and they're going to follow you home to keep an eye on you, to make sure that you're not going to come back and you're not going to hurt their families. You're not going to hurt their children. And it's a protection thing. But more times than not, that tagging is they actually like you and they're watching you. Just like we go out and look for them, they're out here looking at us.
Right. And just like Duke had said when he was on, they had been protected, I think, from a bear.
Absolutely. There was a bear that had something wrong with it. When I asked them, they said the bear had something wrong in its mind and that it was a threat and that they had ran it off so that Duke and who he was with at the time were safe, that they wanted them to know that they were safe.
Oh, and I feel bad for the bear too. I feel bad for any animal.
They didn't kill it.
I feel bad.
I mean, they didn't kill it. They just ran it out of the area.
Yeah, that's what he had said.
We have all these venomous snakes here. My neighbor gets a ton of them on her side. My other neighbor on the other side of me gets a ton of them. I rarely get them. Doesn't mean I can't. One might sneak by now and then, but in the 5 years I've been here, I had one black snake, rat snake, which is harmless, get into the garage and I got him out of there. And we had one small rattlesnake that went under the air conditioner and that one left. We had one that my neighbor called and said it was about 6-7 foot long, was coming across her property towards my yard, never came into the yard. My husband stood out there and looked for it because he was going to shoot it if he saw it. Never came on the property. I mean, but I always ask him, please keep the snakes out of here. You know, I have pets, I have this, I have that. So they've been very kind to me. That doesn't mean it's foolproof, but they've been very kind in helping keep them away.
Right. And oh my gosh, you have a very good husband who would do that to a snake. I'm just going to say that. I mean, anyone who would.
Well, the foots are what keep the snakes away. Pat doesn't this. The Bigfoots keep the snakes away for me. But when that snake went in there, my neighbor had said, you know, get like diesel and you put it on your property line so they don't cross it. So I said, okay, you get to be on snake duty. So he stayed up on the porch. I said, I don't want you going off the porch. And so God bless this man. He stood on the porch and watched it in case it came out. He was going to shoot it for me, but it never came. It never came into the property.
Well, that's good that you have them protecting your property too. That really is, because you and I talked before. I hate snakes. I just no. That's one of my big.
I don't mind the non-venomous ones. It's the venomous ones that I have the issue with. They do a pretty good job of keeping me safe. If I have, you know, because I get bothered by the government now and then, and they'll warn me. They'll say the bad men are coming to look for you, and I'm like, okay. And they've warned me, and they did when I had one show up here, and you know, so they are pretty good about keeping an eye on me. They, you know, it's not foolproof like. The bad ETs, sometimes they come in almost in a hologram form, and so there's no warning, and they just show up, and then things happen. But normally they keep a pretty good close eye. I have good security.
That's good. That really is. Those people. Yeah, my snake fear, like when I was little, it was a garter snake or garden snake, and every summer it would be at the foot of these stairs from our house, and it would move for my mom. It would not move for me. Oh, and I was just terrified of it. And she would be like, you know, just try to like jump out. It wasn't that big. I'm like, no, I had this guttural fear of it. And I would not go down the steps if it was there. So I'm not a snake fan. So yeah. So do you want to tell everyone where they can find you?
Sure. If anybody wants to reach me, I'm on Facebook, but I'm under Robin Haynes, Haynes McCray. If you go to just Robin McCray, I will never get it. It's an old account. I can't even get into it. So it's Robin Haynes McCray. If you want to email me, my email is RLYNNE and a period. If you don't put the period in, I don't get it. And then Forest, FOREST, people, PEOPLE @gmail.com.
Okay. And what are you having any conventions coming up, conferences coming up?
I do. This weekend, I will be in Dillard, Georgia. Pat and I both are speaking at the Georgia Bigfoot Conference. And then on the 21st and 22nd of April, I will be at the Nebraska Conference in Hastings, as well as will Duke Sullivan, World Bigfoot Radio, William Lunsford, Stephen Hill. Blaine Tyler will not be speaking, but he will be there to speak to people and guests. Christy Sci-Fi also is not speaking this year, but she will be there to greet people and talk to people if anybody want to talk to her. We'll have Don Monroe, Ken Collins will be there, Keith Crabtree will be there. We have Lyle Blackburn will be there. So we've got Alan McGargle and Ron Meyer will have a new film out. And we are also supposedly going to be showing the Legend of Boggy Creek. So we have 2 movies on Friday night this year that people can see as well. So you can go online.
It's gonna be a good time.
We have a blast. So you can go online to Nebraska Bigfoot Conference 2023. If you want to buy online tickets before the door, they are $5 more a ticket once you get at the door. So it's cheaper to get it online. But yeah, we encourage everybody to come. We have a great time. Going to be a ton of vendors. Like we've got a lot of vendors this year. We're trying to total up the vendor table, and I've still got people wanting tables. So,
oh wow, it really does sound like it's going to be a good time.
And also, Melba Ketchum has the Cryptid Genome Project out. Go on her Dr. Melba Ketchum page on Facebook, and the details on it. If you want to donate to it, definitely suggest you do. We've got a lot of good things coming up with that, and a few surprises in store.
Oh boy, that sounds interesting. You have to send me the link. I'll be more than happy to take a look at it and share it on my Instagram.
I will absolutely send that to you. If you just go on Facebook on Melba Ketchum, if you are on Facebook, Bernadette, I can send you the link to the GoFundMe for it.
Okay.
But like I said, we're hoping we've been trying to pull this off for a couple weeks now, but we do have a very big surprise for everybody that we hope they all enjoy, and hopefully we'll have that out for everybody within the next week or two.
Oh, it sounds interesting. I hope I'm able to see it.
You will.
Well,
It will be where everybody can see it. Trust me.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much again, Robin. I truly appreciate you
thank
coming
you
on.
so much
I
for
hope to
having
have
me.
you back.
Definitely. Anytime.
All right. You have a good night. Bye.
You take care. Bye.
Bye. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for putting up with me and my learning how to produce tonight. And so let's see. Next week, I do not have my guest lineup for next week. So I'm a little embarrassed about that. But it's going to be a great show. Tomorrow night, Lon is back again. We are excited for his show. And he will be on at 9 p.m. And we'll see you then. Have a good night, everyone.